Hello. Throughout the discussion that you're about to watch, we use terms and processes that you may not be familiar with. Don't worry. We pause the presentation and put a description or definition of the term or process there for you. Also, we include references where you can look for more information on it. After the presentation, you can look down below and see the actual online and text references. I hope you find this discussion useful and enjoyable. Hello, I'm Don Ardiel. Today I'm in discussion with architect Bill Lett, a principal of Unity Design Studio. Bill is an acknowledged expert in integrated project delivery and leads the architectural profession in the application of Agile Project Management and lean methodologies in design construction projects. Traditional or predictive project management involves extensive planning early in the project to define the scope, schedule, and cost. As the project progresses, effort is made to execute the project consistent with the plan. Change is limited and discouraged. Agile or adaptive project management, on the other hand, is a change-based approach. It's extensively used in the software development industry, and it's finding applications in design construction projects. Architects interested in obtaining the Project Management Institute's Project Management Professional Certification need to understand agile and hybrid project management approaches. A practical way to do this is through integrated project delivery. We started our discussion talking about the PMP certification exam. PMP exam now is about 40% agile.
Right.
So the
Makes sense.
architects need to have a way of linking this to architectural practice. And I'll say the most practical application for this is through IPD. Agile project management has been integrated into your office practices, and how the management of resources particular has had an impact on how you run office operations. How is an agile approach to the management of design projects different from a traditional method of design, project planning, and execution? That was my first
Yeah,
my first question.
yeah. I think just to preface the question and to preface all these questions,
Yeah.
what's been interesting is since you and I last talked, we have we have been, in the spirit of continuous improvement, we've been looking at how we do things and everything, and we really took, like a full-on agile approach when we started into the IPD world, and we were doing, things like scrums and all
Mm.
of that. And what we found was that on such large complex projects, because obviously agile is coming out of software, which is why PMP is looking at it.
Yes.
One of the things actually that has happened since you and I met last, just as an aside, is the Project Management Institute of Manitoba invited me to and two other people to come from Ontario, to talk about how we use agile and lean in design, and we got into this room with like 1,500 people. And if you were in the Canoe Museum session, I always ask questions to start. Like, I want to know who my audience is, right?
Hmm.
So I'm like, who in the room is in construction or building of some type? And like 12 people of the 1,500 raise their hands.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and who is in IT? And everybody put up their
Yes.
hands.
Oh.
And so I'm like, okay, this is interesting. What am I going to do here?
Mhm.
um, So, I understand why PMP is so into agile, but where I was going with this is we found that with the complexities of a building project, that just following an agile process can take teams kind of down the wrong path. And so what we've done is we've really embraced lean, and lean that is using some agile methodologies. And so we've since become members of the Lean Construction Institute in the United States, which is now the Lean Design and Construction Institute. I've spoken at some of their sessions, at the design sessions in Chicago and San Diego. And so we've really embraced kind of a lot of the lean principles that then can use agile principles, like sprints and task planning and stuff like that. So one of the things, now to get into your question, when you talk about agile approach to management of design projects, is first off, we pull plan. So, we're not scheduling projects, we're pull planning projects. And we're looking at all the major milestones, and we're usually doing it with a broader group that includes the constructor, because about 90% of our projects are collaborative now, whether it's IPD, progressive design build, or construction management. And we're trying to bring everybody on early in the project. So what we're trying to do is align ourselves with everybody through a pull plan. And then, just like in the construction industry, what we've been doing architecturally is all three of our studios come together every 6 weeks, and we do a 6 week look ahead. So we take everything from each project's pull plan, and we do a 6 week look ahead, and this helps us with our resourcing for projects. It helps us understanding, where we might have pinch points with quality assurance or quality control, or things like BIM management and clash detection and those sorts of things. We've found, like the construction industry, that in architecture, a 6 week look ahead is a really nice time frame, because not much is going to change in 6 weeks. Like sometimes a project might be paused or something like that, but other than that, fundamentally, you can plan for a 6 week period of time. And so then, based on that 6 week period, the teams do follow agile processes where they're doing sprints, and they're looking at their plan percent complete in their sprints. Some projects might do a week sprint, in which case they'd have six in that period. Others might do a 2 week sprint, obviously, in which case they'd have three. And so understanding how the teams are performing and really kind of driving down what all the tasks need to be to get to the finish line. The other piece that we're in the process of doing right now, which you will appreciate, is we are taking all of the checklists, the RAIC checklists from the Canadian Handbook of Practice, and we're converting them into basically like a RACI matrix.
Yes.
so that we can assign individuals and assign what they're responsible for by phase, and so we've really kind of just started down this road where we're really kind of taking it seriously. We did a session yesterday actually, on our shop festival project that we're doing, and so we're finding that really helpful and that all came out of IPD for us. Like,
Hmm.
the racing matrix is something that is a contract requirement in the CCDC 30 and the AI8 contract. And so it has to be done. And so we've been doing these on our IPD projects, and now we're bringing that forward into all of our projects, so that we can then, make sure that everybody knows, whether it's like a junior technologist or a senior project lead, what their responsibilities are. And we're going to review that, by phase, depending on what phase the project's in. Um, every team does a stand-up meeting, which is very agile, right? Like, that's something that happens every morning, and we do it as a full studio too. Like, we do a stand-up meeting every morning as a full
Yeah.
studio to talk about pinch points, resourcing, that sort of thing, to make sure that everybody's aligned for the day. And that's been something that we've been doing for a decade and a half, to be honest.
Hmm.
Um, so, all of that's a bit different, than, say, traditional methods, and we report out, right? So part of the 6 week look ahead is every team has to report out on where they're going, and then we use pretty specific QA/QC processes that are very agile, in that it's defined exactly what happens when it goes to someone, and who it goes to, and what their responsibility is, and then ultimately how that gets to the principal in charge sign off. So that is, like, certainly, um, I would say different than what we would see in traditional, especially with some of the partners that we work with, right? Like, we're working with different partners across the province that are all architects, and we feel like we're doing things, like, it feels like going to a traditional office feels like really strange now.
Now, you said you're doing a QA/QC. The way
Yeah,
you just described it there, it does sound like traditional QA, QP, quality
yeah,
planning, quality
yeah.
assurance, quality control, where
Yeah.
you're tracking your processes, you're looking at your inputs and your outputs to identify blockages, etc.
Hmm.
How can you be more specific of how QA/QC is different in a
Sure.
lean, agile environment than the traditional
Yeah.
environment?
Yeah. Fair. Well, I think because we still treat it like a sprint, right? So,
Okay, okay.
so whoever's doing whatever particular like group of tasks, we have a sprint. We define the length of that sprint. We define what we think the priorities are for them in that sprint, and then and again, that aligns with a lot of the chop
Hmm.
pieces too, but. Um, we make sure that they're covering their bases, so that as they're going through, whether it like if it's a key quality control piece,
Hmm.
they've got a certain amount of time to do it, and in the morning they're going to report out what their plan percent complete is on
Yeah.
the quality control, and say that I've completed so far 23% of my tasks, and I'm
Hmm.
25% of the way through my time. So,
Yeah. Well,
you know,
one of the things that when I'm teaching classes that architects constantly, I was going to say, complain about, but it's it's changes. Now, changes in the design process that are introduced on short notice that are expected to be addressed immediately. Um, Certainly in a traditional project management and in the CHOP, it's reinforced. You get the design, then you get all your sign-offs. But in the agile approach, it reinforces change-based management. Do you have a different approach to how do you address the client's need for rapid change and rapid resolution of what they want? Can you can you comment on that? Is
Yeah,
it
sure.
different than the traditional
100%.
office?
Yeah, 100%. So I'll give you a specific example.
Yes.
So we're doing the Kitchener Indoor Recreation Complex. The project started as a $70 million indoor recreation center that was going to have a soccer pitch, some pools, two pools, and some change rooms and a couple multi-purpose rooms. And through the validation process in IPD, um, we decided, not we, but well, we, because it is a team, the owner's part of it,
Hmm.
decided very last minute to make the soccer pitch a full size FIFA soccer pitch, to add a running track around the outside of it, which made the space even bigger. So we've got 258-foot spans in the short direction right now
Hmm.
um, on this field, and so it's one of Canada's largest indoor soccer pitches now. It went from being kind of standard to the largest, and all of that was happening in validation. So that was the first kind of thing, and the thing we like about IPD or construction management or progressive design build is we've got everybody at the table. And so what we do is we create what we call swarms.
Hmm.
So we bring all the people that we need together and we put them all in one room for a period of time that we think we're going to need. And one of the most important people in the room is the conceptual estimator, right? Because we're designing to a budget, we're not budgeting to a design, right? So in this case, the owner said, we can afford $20 million more. Can we get this FIFA size pitch
Hmm.
for $20 million? And so we put together a swarm that included obviously the architects, the structural engineer, the building envelope trade partner, and then of course the estimating team from the builder's side. And we took a few days and we did as much design work as we needed, right? We always ask, what does done look like in this case? We want a level of comfort. And we were able to tell the client that yes, we could do this for the $20 million. And they said, great, let's add this to the validation. We had to change all the validation documents as we were going, but we were able to react because it's always this project first mentality when you're working in lean, right? It's the project takes precedence. So we were able to do that. We were able to validate the project and say that we can build this building that does these things of
Hmm.
this quality for this much money and this much time. And then we got into the implementation phase. So we're in the midst of doing working drawings and we start construction. And the client had asked us to design the building in such a way that a second phase could include a quadruple gymnasium. And we're actually pouring footings. And they said, guess what? We want you to actually do this. Can you do it for $19 million as a shell? But we'll probably give you $30 million by the time the project's finished for this. And so again, we brought together a swarm of everybody that's affected. In this case, it's pretty much everybody because like mechanical and electrical and all that good stuff, right?
Hmm.
And we did enough work to be able to say that yes, we think we can meet your budget to do the shell portion of this for 19 million and the interior fit out for $11 million. And that probably took just 2 weeks to do it
Hmm.
because we were all together. We all were still using our sprint planning boards. So everybody was, all the project implementation teams had sprint plans in place. And we pull planned that little section of time to say this is when we're going to need to know this information. This is when the estimators are going to need to have the information they need, but let's spitball first. Anyhow, the long and the short of it is the gym is the steel is going up, and we only started design on that in January.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. You had mentioned a validation phase, and I had a question since you brought up the issue of validation.
Yeah.
Um, when we're looking at the IPD the phasing diagram that is in the integrated project delivery, the action guide for leaders.
Yep. Yep.
The what is the point? Because you just said for the Kitchener project that they introduced this change while you were doing working drawings and in construction.
Hmm.
When we look at a project management method that really integrates change into the method, at what point do you have to transition from the whole the sprint approach to or do you transition from
Yeah.
an agile approach to a predictive approach because the people doing the working drawings have to know what it is they're actually drawing now, or doesn't it work like that? I've
It doesn't
often seen
work
this.
like that. No.
Okay.
So everybody's still coming together. In this case, it was on a weekly basis. They were still reporting out their weekly sprints and saying, like ultimately, what it becomes even more important to follow the agile process because you're asking the question, what do I need from others, right? And you
Hmm.
have this opportunity to have everybody's ear, right? So mechanical, I need this, structural, I need this, I'm going to start working on the track railing detail. Steel trade partner, can you come and help me with that? Can we set up a meeting to talk about what that could be, right? And it might just be a napkin sketch, right? In the
Yeah.
case of the Kitchener project, one of our biggest successes was that we had Walters Steel as our partner, our trade partner on the project, and they're signatory and they've put their profit at risk as well. And in that case, we're only taking our drawings up to maybe like LOD 100 or 200, and that's
Uh-huh.
it. And doing like shoulder BIM,
Hmm.
to say,
Yeah.
let's move this here, let's do this here, let's do this, and so it's really important that you can follow that kind of agile process to be able to understand what done looks like because a traditional model where you are checking boxes saying yes, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this isn't going to work because if a trade partner is the one constructing something, a napkin sketch might be all that you need.
It's interesting you said you're using your trade partner. It would seem, and as
Yeah.
you said, the level of detail, you're not going nearly as deep into the
Nope.
working drawings because what does the trade partner need? And what do I
Exactly.
need from the trade partner? And if they, as you say, what does done look like? So
Yeah.
in this approach, done doesn't look the same as in
No.
a traditional approach where we know what the detail has to be completed to a much higher level of resolution in the detail. That's very
Exactly.
interesting. So that would help to explain why the a changed based system would work well in IPD because you have
Hmm.
your partner right there and you're
Exactly.
consulting what does done look like, and it's not what you thought of in the traditional process.
Exactly. Yeah. And especially when you've got a trade partner, like in the case of Kitchener, we've got a non-envelope trade partner, so we've got Flynn on board. So they're doing everything from like in this case with the wall panels are cross laminated timber mass timber panels,
Uh-huh.
and so everything from the panel out, the air vapor barrier, the insulation, the siding, the roof membrane, the roof insulation, all of that is all being done by one partner. So
Mhm.
how much drawing do we actually have to do? Because the trade partner understands, that we have to have the rain screen and these are the parameters. So if we put together a performance specification for the roof and the wall system and everything like that, and the structural engineer is comfortable with wind loading and all that good stuff, like how much detailing, like, you think about how much time architects spend detailing parapets and things like that. As long as we're comfortable with the shop drawings being able to show that level of detail and making sure that we've got drip edges where we need them and things like that, why do we need to draw it? Why can't we just say this is the buildup that we think is appropriate for this roof and what we need for code and everything like that, and then have them show us in the shop drawings and the fabrication drawings that they're doing in order to make their wall systems and things like that,
Mhm.
how they're going to do it. And so that's been a hugely successful process.
That would suggest that starting, if you're trying to communicate IPD and Agile and Lean, you're not starting from a design, bid, build mindset. You're starting from a design, build mindset. So let's in order
Sure.
to
Yep.
better understand the process, we start with design build and then we enhance it and modify it with
Yep.
partnerships and trade partners, etc.
Yep.
Taking that
Yep.
route. Yeah.
Yeah, but even in a traditional model, like you can still use a lot of these tools, right? Like we
Yeah.
have projects that are traditional and we still say, okay, like we've got to go to tender on this date. And what does that mean? What does done look like for a tender package? Well, it's significant, right? So
Mhm.
let's pull that back and talk about what we need. Like when does the client want, if I talk traditionally, a 70% class B cost estimate, right? Like
Mhm.
what is 70% in this case and where are we going to peg that, and we pull it back so that we can still use things like pull planning and sprints and things like that in the traditional model. We just the change piece though is what just doesn't work the same way, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it just doesn't, because we're dealing with traditional things. The other thing that we don't have on the construction side of things in IPD is RFIs, right? Like they just don't exist.
I think many
Someone
people would
picks up
love that concept.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's interesting. You've talked when you and we take the Kitchener project as an example. I'm assuming they want a Class D estimate and a Class C estimate and a Class B and a Class A. That they want all those same kinds of, I'll say, traditional management deliverables.
sure.
Um, and so you were able to work in those traditional deliverables for the client?
Nope. Nope,
No?
because we don't do it that way. What we do is we do a monthly forecast. And
Uh-huh.
so everybody has to update their numbers on a monthly basis.
The
So the consultants,
whole
the
swarm is
whole
updating
team,
their
yeah,
numbers.
yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And that includes the GC, who's putting together their estimate. And so, on a typical like, I don't know, let's say the project's 50-50, signatories to the contract and non-signatories to the contract.
Right.
So for all the work that hasn't been tendered yet, for the 50% that maybe not have been tendered, the GC is still doing what they would do in a construction management scenario where they're putting together estimates. They might be reaching out to trades to get
Hmm.
ideas around cost and everything like that. That could be traditional. But fundamentally, you're updating your forecast on a monthly basis. It's a deliverable every month. And that's really critical because you can see where your target cost is sitting.
Hmm.
And it's not that kind of traditional DCBA model because it's happening in real time.
Yes. Now, in that, without the traditional model, I'd imagine that there were people in the client group for whom this was not typical. And I'm not so much thinking about the person or the people you're working with on a daily or weekly basis,
Mm-hmm.
but the people to whom they answer, who
Sure.
aren't necessarily familiar with design construction or are familiar with traditional tendering
Traditional. Yeah.
processes. And so the people you relate to have to somehow communicate this is a different animal.
Mm-hmm.
What challenges did they have in communicating to their superiors about this different kind of reporting, different kind of cost estimating?
Yeah.
What challenges did they find?
They have to buy. They have to get buy-in from the C-suite, if you will, and senior
Yes.
leadership. Obviously before they start into the IPD process, and so in the case of the city of Kitchener, they had the director of procurement had gone to a series of conferences where he was acquainted with IPD, did some research on his own, and then actually hired an IPD facilitator to come in and train council
Mm-hmm.
all senior staff and
Mm-hmm.
all directors in the city of Kitchener on what it was. And then he said, okay, let's go to council now and have a vote. Are we going to issue this RFP as an IPD RFP? And council voted yes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we responded to. And then what we did was, once we were on the project, we did 2 further days of training to say, this is what you can expect from this team. And we brought in all the senior leadership. We didn't bring council in, although a couple councilors joined, so that they understood, what to expect from us through this process.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned the IPD facilitator. Uh, what kind of a person was it? What kind of experience did they have? What was their background?
Sure. So the city of Kitchener hired Colliers,
Oh, Collins. Okay.
and specifically Art Winslow, who's been doing IPD for 2 decades,
Mhm.
across Canada. And so Art is really great at making sure that people understand what it is, how it works, what needs to happen. Like project managers, it's you're recording this. I should watch.
I can
you
edit
know,
it out.
you like, as architects, we say this is something that we do anyway. We project manage, but the
Yes.
reality is IPD is so intense from a design standpoint that trying to do the management piece of a project is very hard. Like, you're listening to what everybody's doing and you're reacting to what they're doing, but you're not managing necessarily what they're doing. There's the project management team that exists on the projects, and so what ends up happening on these projects, and this is in the handbook too that you referenced, is that culture tends to fall off. Old behaviors tend to sneak in, right?
Hmm.
You start dropping things like some of the agile and lean processes that you've put in place, and you become a little bit more traditional and siloed, let's say. And so I do personally, my own opinion is, I think there's value in having someone, like, it doesn't have to be third party. It could be someone from the architect's team. It could be someone from the contractor's team. But there needs to be someone whose job it is to maintain process, culture, um, and make sure that everybody is still making decisions against the values and conditions of satisfaction that have been set for the job. Because it's so easy to start just making decisions against budget, right?
Yes, yes.
And so I think an IPD facilitator is a great thing,
Yeah.
and through an entire project. So we're shortlisted for another IPD project right
Hmm.
now, and they have hired a third party company to do their facilitation, and they would also be signatory to the contract. So they are putting their profit at risk too. So they're
Yes.
very incentivized to make sure
Oh,
that
I
this project
see.
performs well.
Yeah. Do you think that the question would come up when you talk about IPD facilitators? Is the architect in a good position to assume some of the responsibilities of an IPD facilitator, either if they are part of the design team, or should they be at arm's length from doing the actual design? But does an architect, in your experience, have the skill set to fill that role?
Yes, is the short answer.
Yeah.
You definitely have to have the right attitude and constitution to do it. It is a lot of, you have to be, well, you don't have to be, but it certainly helps to be an extrovert.
Okay.
Because when you've got a room with 50 people in it and you're trying to keep them engaged all day, and make sure that we're following an agenda, and that we had set, and that we're doing the cultural things like plus deltas at the end of
Hmm.
each session. and
Yes.
and we're doing A3s, right? Like, we're using A3s to make decisions and all those by the end of the day, it's exhausting, first off.
Hmm.
And but it does take a certain type of person to be able to do that. And when there's tension in the room too, to be able to cut through that as well. And so that's just, those are life skills more than,
Yes.
being anything else. um, and there are some great architects out there in the IPD realm that are killing it in this. And sometimes you have to vote people off the island. We actually
Mm.
just did that last week on a project where we said this individual, we had to have a project management team meeting and bring in an organization and say your senior individual on this project is not cutting it for us.
Yes. Yeah. I've
So,
certainly heard about when you get into cooperative situations where one of the member of the team is really reverting back to the traditional methods, and it's about
yeah,
me and my profits, etc. And it's very difficult to change.
yeah.
That's you've given me a huge amount to work with, and I just really appreciate this. So
Yeah.
I really want to thank you very much for this time. I super
Oh no,
appreciate
I'm happy to always talk about this stuff.
that.
Yeah.
I can tell. That's great.
Yeah.
Th- Thank you very much, Bill. I
No
really
problem, Don.
appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Take
Have a
care.
good afternoon.
Cheers. Bye bye.
Bye.